All right, guys, buckle up. I have a very special guest on the line. I've never spoken with this person before, but he's kind of new to the silver and gold space. He's new to the precious metal scene, and we post all of his articles, and I have to tell you, there's only one person out there whose stuff gets more reads than this person, and that's Jim Willey. And he likes to keep his real name private, which I respect. It's the Wealth Watchman from thewealthwatchman.com. How are you?
Doing well, Sean. Thanks for having me on.
You're sort of new to the scene, so I want to ask you about your website, when you launched that, but you reached out to me via email and started sending me articles just a couple of months ago, and they are very, very widely read. And I typically will sticky them at the top of the page because people enjoy your material so much. I have to tell you, it feels like you are smelling salts to a prize fighter who's hazy in the 10th or 11th round. Your articles are helping people, sort of pick themselves up by the bootstraps, because we have been absolutely pummeled by the criminal cartel, and now the trolls, of course, are coming back out and saying that they've been right all along. When did you launch your website?
Well, thanks for that, Sean. I launched it in early August. So I've really only been doing this a couple of months, but this site was a labor of love. I really spent probably 5 or 6 months behind the scenes with several parties, just making sure I had a lot of details to write on it. I just really wanted to do something a little different, something hopefully special, and I wanted to do it in my own way. So I launched it, and ever since then it's been a crazy ride, but people have been coming, they've been reading, and they've been giving me plenty of positive feedback, and I got to tell you, it's been pretty humbling, but it's been a great feeling.
Well, just to give people a little bit of background, when we post an article, typically a good article, one that people really respond to, gets between 75 to 200 reads. That's something, a lot of them get 30, 40, 50 reads, and what that means is that people aren't just reading the paragraph or 2 paragraphs we post, they're hitting the read more. Your articles consistently are getting north of 1,000 reads on my site. If I leave them up for 24 hours or more, they get over 2,000 reads. And that's pretty exceptional, because the only way that happens is if somebody is writing in a way that people are responding to. So you're writing from a perspective of truth and disclosure. And that's really what we need after this sector, this precious metals community, has been literally pummeled into the ground by a criminal cartel that can do whatever the hell they want without recourse. There are no laws to protect us. There is no body within government that can protect us, because the CFTC refuses to do its job. So why don't you tell me, where did you get this perspective on the precious metals space, and how long have you been interested in precious metals?
That's a really good question. I've really been involved on the precious metal scene personally, probably since the crash of 2008. But back then, I really only got in, especially into silver, in a small way. It wasn't until a little bit later that I really got heavily involved on the silver scene. I wish I had gotten involved just a bit earlier, but honestly, thanks to these criminals who just never know when to quit, I've got a second chance to have just a little bit more at prices that I frankly thought I would never see again several years ago. So I've got mixed feelings about that, the good and the bad. The bad being it's a travesty, as you said, that there is no justice. But on the other hand, what are we to expect? The people who are hammering these things own the system. They own the legislators. They own the regulators. They own the financial institutions. They own all of it. So the only recourse that we have from their crimes is to really step in a very aggressive way and do the very thing they don't want us to do, and that is to buy gold and silver, especially silver, because they have a lot harder time with this tiny market than any other market you could probably mention out there in the world today.
Well, what I want to do is I want to just talk about what's happened here recently, because your articles literally came in the nick of time, because for the longest time we were sort of range bound between that 19 and 22 range, and it sort of felt to many of us as though the cartel was going to sort of stay within that range because they really couldn't afford to take it any lower, because taking it too much lower and below the cost of production was going to result in a run on the COMEX, the LBMA, as we've seen with Shanghai Silver physical stocks. They're being gutted. We all felt fairly confident that we were going to be range bound until finally the system broke. Recently, they've proven to us that they're willing to take it possibly back down to 12. They could take it to 0. As Bix Weir, Brother John, you, and many others have noted, they can do whatever they want because they control this new electronic silver fix. So when the 100-year-old London silver fix died back on August 14th, we find now that nothing's changed. In fact, it's only gotten worse. I've noted in a recent article that since the silver fix, the new silver fix, the electronics fix was rolled out on August 15th, we're down 15+% in silver in 6 weeks. So your articles are actually coming in the nick of time because they're reminding us how valuable an asset silver is, and your articles are pointing out the quantifiable information we all need to redigest to realize that we are right despite the cartel pummeling us without end. So I just want to remind people, silver was range bound between 19 and 21 for the longest time, and they recently just took it below 18. And then you came out with your article, Silver and Gold Demand Explodes, Western Demand Back with a Vengeance. Can you take us through the numbers?
Absolutely, Sean. In the last 4 or 5 days, the U.S. Mint has managed to sell as many Eagles in the last 5 days that they had sold in the previous several months combined. Demand had just seemed to just stagnate over the summer. Some people called it one thing or another, whether it's summer doldrums. I personally do not believe in summer doldrums. I believe that's another excuse to mask what really goes on in the silver market. But that aside, people just weren't buying. They were just beaten down. They were beaten down to a pulp. So this suddenly, on the scene, this new catastrophic drop has really enlivened people who haven't bought in a long time to step in and say, yeah, I'll have some of that action. So they step in and they are taking this on courageously. That's exactly what they need to be doing. Okay, these big price smashes that you've mentioned. One of the things I'm keen to remind my readers, your readers, and people in our community about, these don't come from a position of strength. Okay, the banks are doing this because they feel they don't have any other choice but to do this. These are coming from a position of weakness. I know it doesn't feel that way, okay, but their hand is actually being forced. Their hand is being forced to do this because the last time, in 2008, when J.P. Morgan took over the destroyed Bear Stearns banking institution and over their silver short position, they awakened a sleeping dragon of silver demand on the world scene and especially in the U.S. And I know that the Silver Institute said that from 2007 to 2008, bar and coin demand went from 50 million ounces to 150 million ounces just in 1 year. And that was due to them taking it to prices that were just ludicrous. They were laughable, and everyone could see it. So I think that is what we're starting to see again. And I think that though this drop isn't over yet, I think that the writing is already on the wall, that their time is really running out. And the more they take this down, the less time they have left.
I want to bounce this off you. I want your opinion on this. I've been thinking a long time about this because, of course, I've got the benefit now of history behind me. Recent history of the last 3 years have been hell for anybody in physical precious metals, particularly silver, especially since the top at 48, 49 and a half. And here's what I've been thinking about. I feel naive, and I think we all do, to have believed that these guys, this cartel, we now know about so much of their fraud, the LIBOR, the rate rigging. We know about everything the Federal Reserve is up to in terms of intra-central bank lending of trillions of dollars. We know what they're doing. It's all on the table now, right? I like to say that the men behind the curtain have been revealed.
Right.
I feel now, of course, naive to have believed that the price of silver would escape 50 and go far beyond and trade freely. Because clearly these institutions, these Rothschild, Rockefeller banking institutions, these central banks, are willing to do absolutely anything to kill the interest in real money, in honest money. All right, so we know that. But here's the rub, right? So they've taken us back down well below the cost of production. And I think it, in hindsight, was naive to believe that they wouldn't do that because clearly they're capable of anything. And I think what we're finding with the demand in the East, what we're finding with the Shanghai Silver Exchange, is that Chinese are acquiring the physical hand over fist. Do you think it's possible that there's an agreement between these Western central bankers and the Chinese to take the price down on purpose so that the Chinese can get more cheaper? Because the threat from the Chinese might have been, you take the prices of the physical lower because you owe us so much paper and we don't want your paper. If you don't want us to dump your treasuries, if you don't want us to abandon the dollar, then you take the precious metals lower so we can acquire more with all our dollars. That's what I've been thinking lately, and I'm curious to get your opinion on that.
That's a really interesting thought there, Sean. I've really entertained that notion myself. I know that several other commentators, respected commentators in the precious metals blogosphere, have been saying pretty much the same thing you just said. A couple of things come to mind. I know that the Chinese acquired the J.P. Morgan Chase building there, in Manhattan, which had one of the largest private gold vaults in the world, and it's almost directly, if not directly, connected to the New York Fed vaults via underground tunnels. That sort of asset, that crown jewel asset, would never, in past times, ever have been sold to any other foreign government, especially a major competitor like the Chinese authorities. I really think it is possible that there is some sort of agreement to let the U.S. government have time and have a grace period. I don't know what miracle they think they're going to pull off while this grace period is going along, but at this point, it's possible. I have entertained that thought. Another example, the LME, the sale of the LME, which is another crown jewel of the Rothschild market there in the city of London. It was sold. It was sold to China, and while that's not precious metals related, to say that is an unimportant business exchange or an unimportant exchange for those base metals is simply ridiculous. That would never have, in their wildest dreams, been sold to the Chinese at any other time. Let me just say this. I got an email from a Shield brother, a subscriber, and he said, well, why don't you mention the Rothschilds? It seems like they're pulling all the strings. I don't think they're pulling as many strings as people think they are these days. I think that they're trying to give and give and give to the Chinese, who are just taking. And I think they're hoping that they can buy themselves a seat at the new seat of power. And I think the Rothschild family and others like them are in for an unpleasant, nasty surprise.
Well, I hope you're right. I think one of the problems is that families like the Rothschilds, and to probably a large degree the Rockefellers, being as though one of their offspring, Jay Rockefeller, is a U.S. Senator,
yes,
are in control of nuclear weapons, and the Rothschilds, via their proxy in Israel, actually have their finger on nuclear weapons, and I think that is the ultimate trump card. I think that is the problem we face, is even though many people around the planet, even in this country, are finally standing up. We see what the Scottish are trying to do. Of course, I believe that their referendum was fixed. I think that election was stolen. I think that vote was rigged and stolen. What we see are people around the world being absolutely getting fed up with this central banking debt-based Ponzi, this death-based Ponzi, as our friend Chris Twain likes to say. And the problem is that the bad guys control the nuclear weapons, and that's pretty darn scary, because at the end of the day, they're starting to behave now like cornered dogs, rabid cornered dogs. And unfortunately, they're not just dogs with rabies, they're dogs with rabies with nuclear weapons. So it's pretty terrifying, because I don't know how you take the planet back from people who not only control nuclear weapons, they also have extremely complex weapons at their fingertips, like HARP, like bioweapons that we maybe know about or maybe still don't know about. Some of them, they have the CIA at their fingertips. I should tell you guys, I just watched last night with my wife Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit. We got that on DVD. I don't know how many of you out there have seen this movie yet, but I want to just give you the lowdown because I recommend it. It's humorous if you're among the awake. If you're among the sheeple, then you'll be propagandized too, because generally the movie revolves around this. New recruit Jack Ryan to the CIA is recruited to help fight a bad guy in Russia in the desperate attempt to protect the dying dollar. So the whole movie revolves around a oligarch in Russia being a bad guy, and Jack Ryan, of course, from the CIA, doing only the best possible thing on behalf of this wonderful nation to help protect the dollar, because it's the boogeymen in Russia that could at any moment bring down our dollar. And I thought, boy, what a wonderful allegory for what's truly happening. Of course, there is some role reversal there, because anybody who's awake might be a little suspicious about the CIA's motivations. What do you make of what's going on with Russia and China in the BRICS as it relates to this de-dollarization that is now happening? It cannot be denied and it cannot be stopped.
You're absolutely right. It's really a really amazing thing to watch on the world scene. It's happened in less than half a decade. I mean, half a decade to people like us who are used to our, breakfast, or lunch being ready in 30 seconds in a microwave. Half a decade seems like a long time. But if you're talking about defanging and declawing the monster that has controlled the world financial markets for 2-3 centuries, 5 years is a blink. Okay, this is happening very quickly, and people have to have a little bit of patience. They have to understand what is happening. They have to understand this shift is seismic. It's tectonic. The plates are moving of the earth, the very earth under your feet. It's happening very quickly, and it's only going to get quicker. Okay, I know it seems like the speed is breakneck right now. We see 2 and 3 articles sometimes in a day about things that undermine global U.S. dollar hegemony. But that's only going to increase in exponential speeds. But now we have the anti-NATO. We have the SCO coming out, which Mongolia is actually going to be a part of too, along with the rest of Eurasia. And you have these 2 factions of literally East and most of the West. Just against each other. But we really know who really is behind these factions. So I find it encouraging. I find it encouraging that there's people who finally feel like, after working long enough behind the scenes on all the things they have to get right, there's no do-overs with this. They have to get it perfectly. All the I's have to be dotted, all the T's have to be crossed. There's no do-overs. So at this point, you're getting close to ready to launching whatever it is. All the things they want to do, whether it's a brand new global gold-backed bond trading, this brand new Silk Road, this 21st century Silk Road that's going to go all the way from the far ends of East, all the way across the Middle East, all the way across Europe, perhaps up to Frankfurt or Paris itself. It'll be able to take you there from one end of Asia and Europe to the other in 4 or 5 days. It's incredible. So if you look at all the things that are happening on the world scene, especially in these geopolitical conflicts like in the Ukraine, it begins to make sense. Or in Syria. Oh my word, Syria is a ridiculous thing going on there. This is not, for anyone listening, this is not about ISIS. Okay, these strikes are occurring because they want. When I say they, I mean Langley, CIA, I mean Washington, D.C., and the City of London. They want mission creep to be able to have regime change, taking out the Assad regime. That's what this is about. They went away kicking and screaming last Labor Day in 2013, and all the photo ops of John McCain with ISIS, people back then showing up to be best buddies. They're being used as the casus belli to go in and start, bombing another second world country into the dirt, because that's what we do best, right?
Yeah, that's right. They don't want to actually go after ISIS. They want to go after Assad's infrastructure. It's basically it's a war against Assad by proxy, because we all remember that a year ago the American people shot down that war. We said, hell no, we don't want more war. We're tired of your wars of aggression. without any result that's good for anybody other than the banksters. And now, of course, through the rope-a-dope of these quote-unquote beheadings, which some mainstream publications have decried as being fake from the very beginning, but do you think CNN or Fox will report on that? No, they just continue to show the beheadings and talk about the beheadings as if they are absolutely authentic, and that's the reason to go to war. No, your point's an excellent one. If you don't mind, I want to circle back to my naivete, because here's part B of my theory about $17 silver. Again, everything is contrary to logic, right? The Patriot Act is the furthest thing from patriotic. The Department of Homeland Security. Well, first of all, why are we calling our republic a homeland? Isn't that very Nazi-esque? Why is everything contrary to logic? Why is black white? Why is up down? And of course it stands to reason now that I step back and I look at it through the lens of history that silver's at 17. Why isn't silver at 57? Well, because it's contrary to logic. It's back at 17 because, and here's my thesis, part B to my naivete and my thesis is that the bankers, did we honestly think that the bankers, they're going to close their own escape hatch as they ran the Dow up to 17,000 plus? Did we actually think that they would close their own escape hatch? Or did we now, through the hindsight and the lens of history, did we learn that, no, what they're probably doing is they're driving the price down so they can each individually acquire as much physical as possible for their own families. That is now my new theory. I believe that they've driven the price down below the cost of production on purpose because now they are liquidating all of their fiat. They're liquidating their ones and zeros in computers to buy physical precious metals cheaper than those of us that have been buying all the way up and now all the way down. And these guys are ruthless. I guess that's the bottom line. They're absolutely ruthless. They're ruthless in their economics. They're ruthless in their worldview. They're ruthless through their eugenics. They're ruthless through their monetary system. They're ruthless. So it makes perfect sense that silver's back down at 17. But here's where they went wrong. Those of us who have been stacking aren't going to be scared away. We're just going to tell more and more people because I am astounded now that the price is this low. When I was a buyer at 30, when I was a buyer at 40, the fact that I can now get 2 and 3 times my silver back at 17, that just means that there will be a run on physical, and I don't think it can be stopped. Am I off base, or do the trolls have it right? And you and me and everybody else pounding the table on silver and on gold are just fools?
I don't believe so at all. If there were plenty of silver to deliver, they would have a point. But there isn't. There's plenty, and that's what several of my series have been on, especially one that I entitled the Silver News Series. If you don't mind, I would like to touch on a couple of main points of that series. One of them is the lower that they take this price, the less silver comes onto the market, to the world market, to be sold, to be consumed, to be used in industry or by investors. The catch-22 that they're caught in is that they desperately want and need a lower silver price. But when they do that, they lose tens of millions of ounces more of the precious few ounces of silver there is left, or that's being brought onto the market right now. Case in point, last year when they took silver down in the spring and summer dramatically under the 26 level and then down to 18, it just really became uneconomical for a lot of people to do a lot of the scrap and recycling. There's a cost to all that. And there was a huge plunge in scrap recycling silver. It dropped off a cliff. It was like over 60 million ounces less was brought back onto the market just in that one factor. And yet, demand exploded. We went from 140 million ounces of silver demand around the world in 2012 to 50 million ounces in 2013. Another 100 million ounce boost worldwide in silver. And India, of course, did have something to do with that. They took delivery of thousands of tons for various reasons. But I guess the point is, sometimes it's easy to feel like when you read these blogs, when you read these websites, when you read other people who know what's going on, sometimes you feel, I'm the only one who knows it. But that's not true. You are not the only one who knows it. There are millions and millions of other people around the world. They may not know all the crimes going on behind the scene that you do. They may not be able to see the string pullers. They may not be able to be there and follow on a day-to-day basis which Wall Street executive is under, like the FBI announcement that a spoof trader in one of these banks was under investigation and would probably face penalties for manipulating the commodities market. They may not know that, but they know. These people in the East, they know it's part of their psyche, it's part of their DNA. They know that silver and gold are precious. They are more precious than paper. They are more precious than digital on the screen. They are more precious than anything that anyone from Harvard or Yale could tell them is precious. You cannot tell those Indian farmers to take those pieces of rupee paper and string it around their daughters' necks and ears and heads and arms on their wedding day. They will never do that because they know in a place that can never be touched by these criminals what real wealth is. Hundreds of millions of them are doing this. You are not alone. You are strong. You are powerful. You do what they're doing. You buy like you don't have tomorrow to do it, because you just never know. When you may not have tomorrow to do it, you don't know how long these phony exchanges can keep this ball going. I've been amazed at how long they've been able to keep it going. But you know what? It has an end game. The end game, I don't know what it is, and it's not my job to tell you what it is. My job is to remind you that it's coming.
Wow. Well, that was powerful, and that may be a great place to end this one with the Wealth Watchman, because like I said at the beginning of the interview, the articles being put out by thewealthwatchman.com are articles that remind us of how to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, because when you're at the receiving end of an endless litany of lies and propaganda, it can be pretty brutal. It can be brutal with our friends and family. It can be brutal with our colleagues, who most of which are sheeple. Most people in this country are still not awake, but to your point, in other cultures, like in India, those dowries are done in physical gold. Those dowries, that accruement of wealth over generations, is done in precious metals. Our nation is very young. Our nation is very naive. Our nation is removed from that monetary history. Certainly this last generation, we've been demonetized out of our own coin money and silver since the 60s, the late 60s. So that's several generations removed from physical precious metals. So it's easy for the bad guys to demonize the metals in this country, but I think to your point, Wealth Watchman, it's not working worldwide. It's working pretty well in this country, but it's not working outside the borders of this country very darn well.
Absolutely. And because it's not working anywhere else, because it's not working in the exact places who are going to be calling the shots in the future, it behooves all of us to do exactly what they're doing. Okay? When the enemy attacks, and they attack head on, okay, don't stand there and take their charge. Okay? You charge them right back. Okay, you say, this is hilarious. Okay, $16 silver. Okay, what next? $14 silver? I don't care. I'm not waiting for $14 silver. In fact, I locked in a purchase of more silver the other day. I practice what I preach. Sure, it could go to $12. Not that I'll be able to buy it for $12 when it gets there, but it may go there. But in the meantime, I got that actual bar that I was wanting to get. Premiums, everything included, $18. Under the cost of production, as you said. The joke's on them. The joke's not on you. You'll be left with real wealth. They'll be left with nothing. You must do whatever you need to do to stand firm in your resolve. You plant that shield, brother. You plant that spear in the ground. And if you can't make new purchases, you just stand there with resolve. If you can, you attack them. This is the time to attack if you can. And many are doing that. And that is apparent by the mint numbers around the world.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just going to say. I want to just sum up with this. I was sent this article today by Mark S. Mann, my friend, but also I'd seen it previously there today by Bix Weir from Rotorua, who wrote this article, Bad Guys Trying to Set Up Putin. Does this con ever end? And the answer to that question is no, this con won't end until the jig is up. This con is in the process of ending. And that's why J.P. Morgan is now trying to position its 76 million households data breach as something that Putin's behind. Which again reminds me, as we come full circle, it reminds me of that Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit movie, right? The premise of that was Russia's the bad guy. Russia could bring down the dollar at any point. Do we see the parallels in movies like Contagion, World War Z, as now we see Ebola rolling out. Of course we do. We see the predictive programming from Hollywood. We see the predictive programming in the media, as Newsweek labels Putin the pariah, as J.P. Morgan blames Russia on a cyber attack, which resulted in this data breach that affected as many as 76 million households. We can see them lining up their narrative and their fable, right? Their new 9/11 false flag will be an economic collapse. Who will they blame it on? Will they blame it on China, Iran? Now it looks like it'll be Russia and Putin. We know what's going on because we are not the sheeple. Those of us listening know exactly what's going on. We can see their playbook because the men behind the curtain have been exposed. We know about their Federal Reserve, we know about their phony money, and we know what they're doing. And guys like the Wealth Watchmen are trying to help protect you and help you see the light, because when the cartel continues to pummel us day in, day out, it gets pretty lonely at the end of the barrel of that gun. And then when the trolls come out and they say, look at these idiots talking about precious metals for so long, when all we were doing was talking about honest money versus fiat funny money, the implementation of justice in the financial markets, right, versus no justice. These are the things we're fighting for. We're fighting to regain our liberty. We're fighting for a sense of justice. We're fighting for a sense of free market. We're fighting for a sense of what made America great early on. And I think that's why your work, Wealth Watchman, is so darn important. I want to draw people's attention to your website. By the way, it's one of the best looking websites I've seen out there. It really is amazing. I don't know how you built that website. Remind people about your website. What is the URL?
Thank you, Sean. The URL is thewealthwatchman.com. I am the Wealth Watchman. And it was built with help. I do not have alone the capabilities to build it, but another patriot, another believer in sound money helped me set it up, and there wouldn't be a Wealth Watchman without him. So I want to thank him, and I want to thank you for giving me a chance, giving me a platform to tell everyone out there who may feel beaten down. We're closer than ever to the time we've been preparing for the ripples in the global economy, for the global reset, but also for the defaults, okay, for the mechanisms for precious metals manipulation to come apart at the seams. This is what has to happen first for that to happen. If you want to see gold and silver freed, okay, if you want to see the prices trade where they always should have been, this has to happen. Okay, they will maintain control over these markets for longer periods of time if that price had risen to $100 or $150 several years ago and then just come back to 50. They would still have complete control over it. Sooner or later, their own greed and their own voracious appetites will consume them. And we are seeing the results of that with these sales numbers coming out. Expect that to continue and to amplify, and make sure that you're a part of it.
Well, I want to thank you for your work, man. You're doing really great work. Everybody's really enjoying your articles because they're so thoughtful and obviously put out there and written with heart. And I think that type of truth cuts through. That stuff is evident to people, whether somebody is really coming from a place of truth and honor or not. And your stuff cuts through, so I want to commend you for that. And our guest has been today undisclosed writer and founder of the Wealth Watchman, wealthwatchman.com. I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sean. Pleasure to be with you, sir.
My pleasure. And I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. Thanks so much. If you want to support us, you can click on the banner for Provident Metals above. They do great work, and we appreciate Provident Metals. They've been supporting us for about a year now. And people ask, do you have a donate button? We don't. But if you want to support us, support our advertisers. We really do appreciate it if you choose to do that. Thank you. And thank you for tuning in to this conversation. Thank you for clicking like if you liked it. Thank you for sharing it with others. And thanks so much, as always, for visiting us at sgtreport.com and thelibertymill.com, and check out thewealthwatchman.com. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful week. Bye.